All right, good evening, folks. Welcome to our cycling coaches webinar for the preseason of 2021 here. I'm setting up our slides so you can see them. So we will go over everything that you all need for cycling this year. We will talk about everything from the COVID protocol stuff that isn't so much a protocol as it used to be, which is great for us getting back to how we were participating in the past. And we will also talk about the typical things, qualifiers, so on and so forth for cycling. So again, if you don't remember who I am, it's been a while since we've all been together for cycling. I'm Zach Cintron. I'm also joined by Mike Sarnowski, who I think you should all probably remember as well. So I'm going to cut it off and hand it over to Mike, and he's going to go through updated COVID protocol. And then after that, like I said, we'll reconnect. We'll talk some deadlines, certifications for coaches education, qualifying events, so on and so forth as usual. So Mike, it is all you.
Okay, well, thank you. And good news for everybody here. As opposed to last year's session or any of the ones that we've done recently, you don't have to listen to me talk for an hour. So this should be 5 to 10 minutes max, unless there's a ton of questions. But we're in a really good shape, really good position with some of the changes that have come into play since summer games with the COVID protocols. So this is just sort of a continuum as we've moved forward, as things have gotten better and such. It is still the case that it's possible that things may change if the certain metrics that we'll touch on shift. But for now, there's no suspension of in-person programming, and actually would have to have some major changes for us to get there. It's all built around some statewide stats that we'll go by in terms of particularly looking at both vaccination levels as well as the percentage of new cases per 100,000 people. Zach, why don't you go ahead and give a flip? So instead of phase 1 or phase 0, 1, 2, and 3, we now have 3 categories: low risk, moderate risk, and significant risk. Right now, we are in the low risk category, and that's going to apply not county by county as we had done previously, but for the entire state. And that is where we either have a COVID rate of 10 or fewer new cases per 100,000 people. Maryland, as of yesterday, was 2.5. It had actually gotten down below 1. And it's still, I think, the 6th best state in the country as far as that goes. But either below 10, and we're well within that right now, or 80% of our participants at a particular event or training, that 80% of them are fully vaccinated. Okay. And with that, the local regulations for event size and all risk mitigation and so on are what comes into play. So we follow what, while we're in this low risk category, we follow what the state has required. So at least as of now, I don't think there's any limits other than whatever the capacity is, or if a facility imposes limits. But there's no limits for outdoor events or I think even indoor events. For people who are fully vaccinated, masks are optional, but I think most folks may not be utilizing them, but it's their choice. And for those who aren't fully vaccinated, they should be wearing them, but we're also not going to be getting into an enforcement situation with that. So then you can see if we go to moderate risk, that's when we get up to 11 to 15 cases per 100,000, and also that we have fewer than 80% of the folks vaccinated. So we're in green if either one of those situations is the case. We definitely are in the less than 10. We don't know yet about the percentage of participants. That's one thing we'll touch on in a bit. But we shift over to the moderate risk. You see the categories there. We're still operating. We continue to follow whatever the event size and risk mitigations and so on. And then we kick in with some additional precautions that we may have. Then when we get to the significant risk, which is both 15 cases or higher, we're well away from that now, but one doesn't know what's going to happen in the fall and such. But that and also less than the 80%. And again, we are still following local regulations, whatever is there. But Special Olympics does impose some size restrictions for indoors at least. So Zach, why don't we go to the next slide? I am not going to read through these next two slides to you. You will get these there. I just want to highlight, since we're in the low risk category now, and we are likely to stay in that category for a while at least, let's focus in on that. And I think it's all good news all around. Please do read through the moderate and the significant risk categories. But even within those, I think it's a better situation than it was when we had the previous structure and protocol. So again, local authority determines size. Everyone in terms of additional forms does need to complete that communicable disease waiver. We're pretty sure that's something that's not going away. It's good for 3 years and such. People shouldn't have to do a new one unless they turn 18 and such. On-site screening is not required. Of course, you as coaches certainly would be keeping attendance records, which you should always do, even if we weren't in a pandemic or hadn't just gone through it. But yeah, we encourage having signage out there, just reminding folks of stuff, but there is no screening that needs to be taken place. That said, however, if anyone has, as we see in the next one, either a positive COVID situation, or quite frankly, if they're exhibiting symptoms, they should not be at practice. And then if they have been tested positive, you can see there that they need to take a break of 10 days and 7 days of no symptoms and such there. But again, I think positives all around. Masking, local restrictions, and again, the standard is that if you're not fully vaccinated, you must wear the mask. However, again, we are not going to be there, and we're not telling you to be there enforcing that, mainly because a person's vaccination status to a certain degree is not something we want to publicly broadcast. We may be capturing that at some point in the future, but for tracking purposes, it's something you would encourage with that. When we go to the next slide. So distancing, it's recommended to have distancing when you're not actually participating, but that's not something where you're, again, necessarily enforcing that while we are in this low risk category. Transportation, this was something that just recently got updated. I'm not sure that folks, if you've seen some of this before. As always is the case, we want to encourage private transportation. And when we're talking transportation here, we're talking transportation to and from practice, transportation to a competition, that type of thing. Not, taking a plane or whatever. But encourage private if Special Olympics is providing that transportation. And that would be something where your program literally is providing it. They've rented a bus or whatever, or if the program is coordinating that. So is arranging pickups or whatever, or the coach is providing transportation and it's not their son or their cousin. You do need, the folks in the car do need to wear masks in anything where Special Olympics is providing the transportation, and one person per seat. So again, and bench seats on buses if you're doing that or whatever. So if there's, however many seats there are in your car, that's how many people you can have there. You don't have to worry about social distancing and such. And then that shifts a little bit as we get into some other situations, but for the most part, we're good there. I don't know that overnight accommodations is something that you would be dealing with, but if you see them there, should that be, that's something that kicks in with winter and summer games and some sports, kayaking and potentially a couple others, soccer, they may be staying overnight for something. Spectators, no limit on spectators, just follow the local authority. And actually, don't quote me on that when I said no limit on spectators. You as a coach don't want those spectators on top of you, and you definitely still have designated spaces for them, but there's no restriction on that like we have had to have, where we had to keep athletes and spectators completely separated at competitions. So there, and then meals, essentially they're recommending in green under low risk, staggering meal times and such, but no major changes as far as that goes. And then last but not least, yes, we're almost done with the protocol for vaccines. Vaccines are not and cannot be made a requirement for participation. That is the individual's own choice. We may begin collecting that information. It is solely for two purposes, well, it is for two purposes. One, because we went over the housing accommodations thing. There's some requirements within the housing policy that we would need to follow that depend upon whether someone is vaccinated or not. And then also, if, knock on wood, it won't happen, but if we need to look at that 80% figure, we need to have something to back it up. So more to come on that. We may start collecting that information during the season. We have a couple plans that, at least at the outset, should be relatively painless, but we'll be looking at that. Individual status, if you know someone's vaccination status, that is not something that you can share. Your SO folks would know that, but it's not something that you can advertise. No scarlet V's on their on their name tags or their uniforms or anything. There's no, other than they need to wear masks when they are not participating in physical activity. There's really no difference for individuals who have not been fully vaccinated yet. And so again, it can't affect any of the registration or anything like that. My gut tells me we probably will be tracking this stuff at some point in the future, again, just in preparation, but I can't reiterate it enough. Vaccination status has no impact on their ability to participate, and is not something that we're going to advertise and broadcast for folks. It would affect, and we're not using it for enforcement purposes. Strongly encourage things and so on down the line, but it's a no-win for us to go down trying to enforce that kind of stuff. So that said, that is it in terms of the protocols. Recommend when you get the decks, read through the other two categories, the moderate risk and the significant risk. I think, unlike some of the previous stuff, we're pretty much settled in, and the likelihood of any significant changes other than moving from phase to phase or whatever, or level to level, is probably not going to happen. Again, Special Olympics overall has almost a year and a half now under its belt dealing with this. So we think this is pretty solid where we're at. So unless there's any questions, Zach, I'll turn it back over to you. I don't see any hands up or anything in chat.
No, I don't see anything either, Mike. Again, if you do have a question, or as we're going through the cycling stuff, you think about something when it comes to the protocol that Mike just outlined, please do throw it into the chat, or we will do a Q&A at the end too, where we can cover everything that we touched on this evening. So moving into cycling specific information, the reminder right out the gate, you guys are used to seeing this slide. Again, it talks about no athlete or volunteer can participate in any manner without their athlete medical or their base level volunteer application. The other thing that we have added to this to remind folks is that everybody needs that communicable disease waiver. So while you have seen this slide 1,000 times at this point, that is the one update to it that is new technically on this slide. So again, what does everybody need? Athletes need the typical athlete medical, communicable disease waiver, they're good. And then you see the levels of participation for certifications that each level of coach and volunteer need. Those haven't changed, besides, again, you need that communicable disease waiver for everybody. That's the kind of added piece going into this year. Most people have done it for the most part, but we do have a lot of athletes that will be coming back for sports that we haven't offered within a past year or so. Cycling deadlines. These, again, if there's dates that you want to take down and notes to take down, this is it. Again, we will send these slides out after. They'll be on the code resource page. The training registration deadline for this year is the end of August there. It's the 30th of August. Again, getting in your rosters in the GMS so we know who's in training and who's looking to participate potentially in qualifiers and state championships. A week after that is the last day to submit forms to headquarters. Again, athletes that need any updated medicals that might be expiring before the end of the season, coaches that need new certifications, whatever it may be, that stuff does need to be in by September 8th there. Again, that needs to be valid through October 16th, which is the Fall Sports Fest date for this year. So please make sure you get all those forms in. And then the competition registration deadline is the 1st of October this year. So we're moving pretty quickly through the fall, but that's nothing new to you guys. Everybody knows the fall goes by in an absolute blur. Again, work with your area leadership, talk when you need assistance, communicate what athletes, partners, coaches are participating. Make sure we get everybody into training that is actually training. We want to make sure we're capturing everybody so we know who participated this year, to get a sense of what our numbers are getting back into the swing of, air quotes, as normal participation in competition. So again, work with your area leadership to get that information in and get assistance as needed. Coaches requirements. We're not going to dive too deep into this. You guys know for the most part what coaches are required of, and I think the next slide, apologize on that. This slide is the best visual representation. I am a visual learner, so just talking about it doesn't help me. Again, your general volunteer needs that application and protected behaviors, and across the board, everybody needs the CDW. So again, the one reminder that I will remind folks is that to be eligible for state games, your team needs a certified head coach. We did implement that. That was supposed to be officially starting for summer games of 2020. Of course, we didn't have summer games of 2020, but that was still the implementation date. We started a couple of years ago with the heads up that that's where we were going. So again, remember that your team needs one fully certified head coach for your team to be eligible for state games. Coaches trainings. If you are a coach and you do need to up your certification status for cycling specifically, that SONA sports certification can be obtained. August 28th, we're still looking for a location in Montgomery County in the morning to run a cycling training. We have a USA certified cycling coach that is friends with Tracy Leah from Fall Sports Fest, who's going to come in from DC. So if my friends in Montgomery County who are on this, if you have any thoughts of where we could potentially go and who to reach out to, I'd love to touch base with you guys following this presentation if you have the opportunity. When this slide goes out, you will also be able to register with the link that is attached to this slide. Again, coach resource page, the link has been up for a few days for registering for this. While we don't have a definitive location in Montgomery County, it will 100% be in Montgomery County. We're hoping somewhere in the Rockville area, a little bit closer to DC for our trainer that's coming in, and it's going to be in the morning. We're going to get in, we're going to talk about some skill-specific training stuff, and we're going to get out and we're going to have a really good day. And then also keep an eye on the coach resource page. We might be able to get another training or two added to the list for this year, but the August 28th is the date we have for sure. Coach's Code of Conduct, I am not going to go through this. Again, you guys should know what's on the Coach's Code of Conduct. If you do not know what's on the Coach's Code of Conduct, I would highly recommend reading it. Again, this is the code of conduct that you guys sign off on to represent your team as a coach and set a good tone and good example for your athletes and be a positive impact on their growth. Again, act professionally, take responsible for my actions. It's a lot of leadership stuff, right? Health and safety, priority number one for our athletes and unified partners and yourself as well. So again, read through the coach's conduct if you haven't. And just a reminder that there are codes of conduct for athletes sign a code of conduct. There's a family and spectator code of conduct, which is great to have on you to remind parents or guardians if you're having any issues. It's a great way to remind them, hey, this is what we're looking to hold you accountable to. And those are great to have on you just as a reminder. They're good for your preseason meetings as well. Qualifying competitions. Again, we want to hold our qualifying competitions. We're trying to go back into a business as usual, normal type of season this year. So we're looking to get back in our group with our qualifying competitions. The main things to remember, they emulate the state competition. They don't have to be the same exact course, but if you can get something close to a 1K course like we offer, get your athletes used to riding something that they're going to ride at the state championships. Of course, they follow the cycling rules for Special Olympics and our national governing body. Have judges or officials. If you need assistance with that, ask me sooner rather than later. Tracy Leah always brings in USA Cycling folks that she knows as our judges and officials, and they're awesome. And of course, the great thing about it is there's USA Cycling people all over the place, and Tracy, I swear, knows all of them. So if you need assistance with that, let me know sooner rather than later, and I can communicate with her to assist. Have an EMT or somebody on site for medical. You never know what's going to happen. It's great if you can have a multi-team qualifier. I know that's easier said than done sometimes, but you definitely want to at least have an in-house qualifier for your athletes to get qualifying times, to get an experience of knowing when to push during their races and how to prepare for their races as well. And then the last thing is just make sure you have a sanction form submitted by your area director at least a month in advance of your qualifying competition. That helps if you are having a multi-area competition, that we can notify people and put it out there that they can see it. It lets us know what's going on. It gives me some information that if you do ask for officials, I can give them the information from the sanction form. Again, the sanction form is just really helpful for administrative purposes. So qualifying for the state tournament. Again, step one is you need to meet all the training registration requirements and deadlines. If you don't have your paperwork on time, if you're not on the training roster, can't qualify for anything because you're not registered for things. And again, we're asking that teams have 2 minimum sanctioned qualifying events. So again, in-house is always a good number one. And then the next one is usually a multi-sporter. We typically hold Sykesville in September. I know in the past that Tom Estock has worked to hold one at Sandy Point State Park. Prince George's, Chris and Gretchen have tried to hold one. St. Mary's typically tries to hold a multi-sport one. So again, think about if you have a facility to offer a multi-team qualifying opportunity this year, please consider it. It helps out other teams tremendously if you do have that opportunity.
So, Zach, this is Mike. Just something to add in here as well. And also it helps tremendously. And I mean, that's what's fun for the athletes. Just as with the deadlines that were there, I don't know if folks saw the little thing down at the bottom, but here as well with this, we recognize that we are coming out of a pandemic. Hopefully we're coming out and that there are unique challenges. If there is an issue with any of these requirements, talk to your area director and he or she will make the decision as to whether to contact me. And if we need to make some type of an extension or an exception or something like that, we'll address it then. We're not going to go ahead and make blanket statements on exemptions right now because we think in most cases folks are able to do this. But we also are realistic and know that this can be a challenge in certain situations. So do know that your area director, and we've got a couple area directors on right now, they're there to help you be successful. Utilize them, and then they can make the decision as to whether to ask for some type of an accommodation there. So that's all. Perfect.
Thanks, Mike. Again, well, I was going to mention that a little bit further on, but it's good to remind folks. Even in transparency, I'm working on Sykesville, but I'm also working on a backup location, 2 backup locations. If something happens where we can't hold Sykesville. Again, we know it's an interesting thing with facilities. We had some interesting facility hurdles for swimming. So like Mike said, we're aware that, things are going to be a little challenging, potentially getting up and running again. Again, put in as much work as you can to find something to get your athletes set up. And again, just communicate with your directors to communicate with us, and we'll work with you as much as we can. But again, we want to provide as many opportunities to our athletes as we can. We'd love to get back to, as I mentioned before, air quotes, business as usual for this season. I think everybody would just really love to be out on bikes at as many opportunities as they can this year. Again, we talked about having an in-house one. That's a really relatively easy layup for one qualifying opportunity. Again, at each qualifying event that you're holding, you want to hold the events that your athletes will be participating at Fall Sports Fest. Make sure you have a facility that is appropriate to facilitate that. And again, one thing that we do like to throw in there, and I don't know truly what the status are of these at this point, is that if there's a mainstream competition that an athlete attends and it qualifies for the distance that they're riding for Fall Sports Fest, let us know. And a lot of the times that can count as a qualifier for that athlete as well. We have the Baltimore Run Festival for LDR as an example here. I know Tracy Leah in the past has mentioned USA Cycling has a race in Trexlertown in Pennsylvania that they're working on getting opportunities for our athletes in. There might be, if you're Adam Hayes and you're feeling like riding a century ride for the heck of it in the middle of the season, sure, we'll probably give you that as a qualifier. That's a pretty good ride compared to your 15K that you ride. So again, look for mainstream opportunities. That could be a good way for you to get your team and athletes involved in other out of Special Olympics opportunities that can qualify for state games as well. So here's the schedule. Usually the schedule is a little bit more legitimized with final dates and information and stuff like that. But again, we understand that there is information that will be coming and that will be changing down the line here, facilities and such. We're still looking to have Sykesville in September there. I don't have a definitive date yet, but we are looking to hold Sykesville. If anybody needs any assistance with getting a facility set up for a competition, let me know. I haven't heard from Delaware yet if they're planning to host or if they're welcoming in people. I think Montgomery has gone up to Delaware's event before. But if you are interested in potentially finding out about going to Delaware, let me know and I will reach out to Kylie, who is the sports director in Delaware, and we can see if we can line something up there. And then last reminder on here is that Fall Sports Fest is scheduled for 10/16 at Fort Ritchie. I don't think I put a slide in here specifically for Fort Ritchie, but just a quick Fort Ritchie update for folks. The location has finally sold after years of them trying to sell it. The good news is that it sold to a local guy that is super, super supportive of Special Olympics riding there and wants us to continue to ride there. The only trick that there will be in the coming years is that they are going to be doing construction. They're going to be adding some buildings. They're going to be taking some buildings out. So we're just going to ask you guys to be flexible with us as we're flexible with them. To keep going at Fort Ritchie for as long as we can. Depending on construction, though, we may have to, tweak the course a little bit, slide it around, move parking here or there. But for the most part, it looks like we should be good, especially this year. Events offered, no different events that we're doing. All the same thing as usual. Again, athletes can compete in up to 2 of these. 50-meter time trial, 1K time trial, 2K to 15K are all road races as usual. We do have one tandem bike pair that comes out of Anne Arundel. So if you are looking to do unified opportunities, that's something down the line that we are interested in doing. If you have unified teams that you potentially may have for this year, please reach out to us and let us know if you're interested in potentially doing that. Maybe there's an opportunity that if we have a handful of unified groups that it doesn't have to be a tandem. Let me express that too, that it doesn't have to be a tandem. If there's any unified groups, we can potentially maybe have a little unified division and start looking at growing unified for cycling too, which is a really great opportunity. Just a note on modified cycles, again, modified cycles are only in the time trial events. So going back to the last slide, 500-meter and 1K time trials are the modified cycles. Again, these are your trikes and so on and so forth. Nothing has changed here. That's been the rule for a while. Just reminding you all about that. Rules, we're not gonna go real deep into the rules. There hasn't been any rule changes from the 2020 rules set that came out. Again, UCI is our national governing body, so While it's good that you know the Special Olympics rules, it's good to look up the UCI rules as well. You know, the main thing we go off of that branches from UCI is USA Cycling. So you don't need to have the UCI details as much as you need those USA Cycling details. But again, having rule sets for all of them, having an idea of the rule sets for all of them is great, just so you have a better understanding of the sport overall. And then a reminder, coach resource page, great location to go to. If you have any questions, it's always a great resource to check before you potentially ask a question, because your answer may be already on there. Coaching, again, you can coach from course sidelines. It includes, but not limited to, changing gears, you know, slow changing speed, directional assistance, encouraging competitors. Again, you can't interfere with the race. You can't get, if you're doing something that is getting into the race where it's causing problems for other athletes, we will more than likely ask you to stop. And then if you choose not to stop, we may ask you to leave. But for the most part, again, you guys know the deal with working with your athletes from the sidelines. We always have the bike barricades up there in Fort Ritchie, so the course is pretty well defined for the most part. Uniforms, again, helmets need to meet the USA Cycling safety standards. We had a look at the safety standards and the stickers for, I cannot remember the acronym off the top of my head, but I can get it for you if you are looking for it. Helmets are essentially good for 3 years, is what I'm trying to say in too many words here. So check with your athletes, make sure they have helmets that are not 10 plus years old. We want to make sure our athletes are safe and are taken care of. God forbid they have a crash, we want to make sure they have a safe helmet to protect themselves. Appropriate pants, again, no jeans or anything. You know, tighter to the body is generally better. A lot of elastic Under Armour type of stuff is usually the way cycling goes. Cycling shoes, if your athlete uses clip-ins, that's great. If they don't, that's fine as well. A lot of our athletes don't. And then gloves, eye protection, hydration. Teach your athletes how to drink while riding. For those of them that are riding longer distances, it's a really, really big help. And it's important for them to stay hydrated on those long races as well. Again, equipment, there's nothing new that has been updated. Bikes across the board are still good. Again, know your athletes, have an idea of what their bikes are and what their bike needs are. The one note that I will put in here from Chris Militello, who is our bike shop expert down there in Prince George's, if your athlete's bike needs a tuning or needs something fixed, take it there and go now. It is like a 2 week to a month turnaround time at best at shops. Ever since the pandemic started and people could do things solo outside, bike shops have been inundated with people left and right trying to get work done, trying to buy bikes. Chris usually has probably at least 2 dozen bikes in his shop, and he said if he can keep 1 or 2 in stock at this point at a time, that's impressive for him. They're going off the shelves like crazy. So again, if you have an athlete or you recommend for your athletes to get a bike tuning before the season, tell them to do it ASAP, because the turnaround time is taking a long time at this point. Mechanical assistance, again, you know, may change part or all the bicycle during a race if a competitor experiences mechanical problems, if they have a backup bike or tires or chain or whatever it may be. You know, coaches can assist in this situation. We don't expect athletes to be able to do this themselves. Cyclists can be pushed up to 10 meters following a crash, breakdown, or flat tire. Athlete may run with the bicycle to the finish lines in case of a crash, breakdown, or flat. Athletes may not make any progress on the course without the bicycle. Again, know your athlete, know their bicycle, have a little bit of an understanding of, you know, bike maintenance if you can. I will say this is one thing that we've talked about a potential extra coaches training this year with Chris Militello is basic bike mechanical work and tuning. So we will let you know if that comes to fruition. Time trials, again, time trials are racing against the clock. We cut everybody loose at about 30 to 1 minute intervals, somewhere around there, depending on how many people are scheduled to participate in that event. And we always count it down. Again, typically we count down about 10 or 5 seconds and then say go and cut them loose. That's the standard command. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Roll the next person up. Get to about 25 seconds in, do your countdown again. That's how we run all the time trials, and that is not changing this year. Hearing impaired and visual impaired riders will use a flag and an arm drop to also let them know, not besides just for the verbal cues. Again, you're starting from stationary, and then when you're released, you can go. You can't push an athlete to go. They need to start themselves. And again, time trials events are eligible for modified cycles, but not the road races. Road races, we do a mass start. We're always going to do our mass start there. And again, we want to get our athletes experience to doing the mass start, starting with other people around them, riding on the course with other people around them, knowing how to safely pass on the course with other people during road races. Again, make sure your athletes that are participating in road races, especially our athletes that ride the longer distance at a higher level, are prepared to do those things in a safe manner. We want to keep them safe during these long races for the road races. Again, finish is determined by placing or the order of crossing the finish line. Again, make sure you have somebody counting laps as well. We count laps at Fort Ritchie, but again, it's always helpful to have somebody on your team counting laps for your athletes specifically as well. Again, warm up for long races is super key. You want to get those muscles fresh. You don't want to have them running our 10 and 15K just fresh coming out the car. So again, warm up, definitely get a warm up in there. And again, the race is declared finished when the front tire of the bike crosses the finish line. That is the official end to it. And just as a reminder, we will be using the plates, the tracking plates as usual for Fort Ritchie this year. We are looking to now move to 1 bib, 1 plate, and move away from you guys having to switch that, because I know that can be a pain at times. So that is a little to be determined. But again, we are looking to move away from the multi-bib, tag to make your life easier for competition as well.
Hey, Zach, Rennie has a question there related to trikes and road races, and whether that is being continued or if that's being eliminated this year.
Let me double check on that with Tracy and part of the management team. I think you're right, Rennie, but I think it was only potentially in the 2K, maybe the 5K. I think once we hit a certain level in road races, we did potentially scrap the trike situation. 10K also, okay. Then let me get a double check on that. And when I do the follow-up email with the slides and the recording of this, I will have an answer to that question there as well. So you guys will get taken care of on that.
Yeah,
thank you for
Rennie,
that
I think it's safe to say that whatever we had permitted in the past, that we would permit here. One thing for folks, I know, Rennie, you're aware of this, but for other folks, if you go to another event outside the state, so for example, you go to Delaware, they may not be following that. Again, that's an adaptation that Special Olympics Maryland would be making to the rules. The Special Olympics rules specifically state, I double checked them today, specifically state that that they are not allowed there. We make that accommodation. So just be aware of that, that if you have some, the same thing goes with adaptations to bikes and such, where they need to be cleared. And Zach, I wanted to add one other thing. The sports management team for cycling did an exceptional job last year putting together some resources for training virtually in that pandemic. Those resources are still just as great as they were a year ago. And it may be something, if you have some preseason time you want to do. The other opportunity could be, I know it is a little more challenging to practice in the rain for cycling. So it may be that you have as a backup that if you get a rain out, or you know it's going to rain out, do a web session using some of those materials for at least for a fitness standpoint. So I was really, really impressed with what not just cycling, but most of the sports did in putting that stuff together. And it's really an excellent opportunity, I think, to utilize them on an ongoing basis, a great new resources for our coaches.
Yeah, thanks for that ad, Mike. Again, I'll kind of hit that as well too with the virtual training guides, specifically for cycling. Very, very strongly video based, which is great. It is one of the things where if there is a specific skill in cycling, we have a video for it in there from a group that I don't remember off the top of my head. They're based out of the UK, but they have a fantastic website that I will add when I send out the slides and recording as well for training videos. I learned a lot looking at a lot of those videos myself. I now know how to properly actually brake on a road bike instead of just slamming on them like I usually would. So I will definitely say they're great resources, like Mike said. But that we are at the point where we have got through our cycling information for the evening. Again, for the most part, we're looking to go, I will say again, air quotes, business as usual. But if you have questions, does anybody have any other questions, anything that they thought of, anything that came up with protocol that you may have a question, feel free to unmute. If you want to ask a question, feel free to put it in chat. I'm not seeing it. It must have been a perfect and great presentation outside of that, the trikes into the road races, if nobody else has any questions there. But I will say again, I will remind folks, if you have concerns or need assistance with things, again, work with your area directors and work through to us. Let us know if there are things that we can help you with. Again, there's a lot of resources out there. We like to leverage our sports management team resources that we have with USA Cycling through Tracy and so on and so forth. But again, we're here to help you. We're here to support you guys, because without you guys doing what you do as coaches and supporting us and supporting your athletes, we don't get to even nearly where we would like to be without you guys. So we appreciate everything you guys do, all the hard work you've put in. And we hope you guys are excited to get back out there on the bikes this year for sure. Mike, is there anything that you want to add before we close up here if nobody has any questions?
No, well, if when you kill the recording, I just need to talk to Shelly about something unrelated to cycling. But other than that, just a huge thank you to everyone. We're very excited for our athletes and for you to be back to something getting close to normal. It's not there yet, we know, and the season will be a little different. But I think it's going to be something close to normal, and we're excited, and just a huge thank you to everything you're doing to make this opportunity available for your athletes.
All right. Well, if there's no questions, again, I will send out a follow-up email with some information regarding the session and some additional information. And again, if you have any questions, please do reach out. Please do work with your area leadership. And we're really excited to see you guys back on the track this year and back at Fort Ritchie. So that's it. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will see you guys throughout the season.
Thank you.